Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. It was only a matter of time before Chelsea's unbeaten run in the Premier League came to an end. Unfortunately for them, it came at the expense of Spurs, their London rivals. How did Spurs do it? Where did Chelsea go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down how Spurs destroyed Chelsea. So before we get to today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're going to break down the first half, see why Spurs were so dominant in that half and where Chelsea went wrong. Then get to the second half, see what changes Chelsea tried to make and how Spurs were able to kill off the game before the hour mark. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We have Spurs in what looked to be a 4-4-2 diamond. They had Kane, they had Son up front. Just in behind them, they had Ali in midfield as the shuttlers, Eriksen and Sissoko and Dyer at the base. And then we get to Chelsea, no real surprises, 4-3-3 as expected. Willian, Hazard, and Morata up front. In midfield, they went with Jorginho, Conte, and they went with Kovacic. So now let's get to the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game. Then we're going to get into how Spurs really pulled Chelsea apart. So 4-3-3 against 4-4-2 diamond. Technically, Chelsea should have the advantage because Spurs are so narrow, and it forces the shuttlers in Eriksen and Sissoko to push out and mark their wider players. However, this was about how Spurs were able to disrupt Chelsea. They start to press from the front. It looked, even from goal kicks, what would happen. You would see the center backs push out. You would see the wider players in Ali and in Son kind of take them out of the game, and then they would have Jorginho dropping off and Kane would sit on him. And that's how they went about it. From open play, how they would really go about it was that they'd have the center backs who could push the ball forward, monitored by Son and by Kane. So they ensured that they weren't able to really play passes from the front, from the offset. And what happened here was that Ali was always floating around Jorginho. There were times where it was Son and Ali who were cutting off the passing lanes. Sometimes Kane dropped in deeper as well to ensure that he can get on the ball. But that has been one of the traits of stopping a side with Jorginho in it. It's by sitting on him, limiting his time on the ball, ensuring that he can't control the tempo of the game. We've seen this from other sides this season. However, Chelsea were able to bypass that through the movement and the ability that Rudiger and Luiz were ball-playing center backs. However, that didn't work here because Pochettino instructed his center forwards to push out into those areas. If the ball goes out wide, let's say to Azpilicueta, Eriksen could push forward and get there. The ball goes out wide to Alonso, you could have Sissoko step into those positions. Very organized. That's how they were going about it. That's how they want to stop Chelsea from playing. And it really did affect them because Chelsea never really got anything going from an offensive set. There was one time where, yes, they did press from the front and Spurs did press from the goal kick and Kepa clipped the ball out to Morata, who nodded into Hazard, and Hazard was able to evade Eriksen and Dyer and drive at goal. Willian was pushing out Davies by staying to the wide right, and Hazard fired a shot on goal. But besides that, the only other opportunity that they did have was when Kovacic won a loose ball. Hazard was able to pick it up between the lines. He slid it wide to Willian, who tried to cut outwards on Davies and flashed his shot wide. Besides that, not much really going for Chelsea. Morata was offside for the most part, and them, from a defensive aspect, just not good enough. Not pressing from the front as we're used to expecting them to, dropping off deep into more of a 4-5-1. Morata was pressing, but no one really joining him. Hazard not looking to pick up Aurier, who's going forward, which forced Kovacic to step into that. What happened here is that whenever they looked to push out or get Alonso or even Kovacic out into those positions, you would have Spurs players darting into those channels, and that was key. You saw Kane obviously looking to dart in there, Son, Ali, all of them were trying to get into those spaces, and that's kind of what their system was about. You have the two forward players attacking the center backs. Both of them want to spin into the channels to ensure that they could drag out a center back. With Son and Ali, what was very great was that Ali would sometimes join the attack and be a second striker breaking into the box, and Son would drop off. And if Son was a bit higher, then you see Ali deeper, staying towards Jorginho, trying to get the ball to either side of him. But Jorginho just didn't have enough protection in that midfield, and he was overrun. And from the grand scheme of things, you look at it, Spurs are pushing their fullbacks forward, and what happens there is that it forces Willian back. If Hazard stays high, then it forces Kovacic out of position. So much space in midfield, and Chelsea just really struggled from that avenue. Spurs were pressing from the front. They were getting past Jorginho. They pulling out Chelsea defenders, whereas for Chelsea, nothing really going their way. Unable to really get on the ball because Kovacic wasn't doing much. And Jorginho wasn't doing much because of the fact that they pressed him out of the game. Kovacic often tried to drift out to the left, but Sissoko was there to man mark him. Hazard, even when he tried to push forward, he had Aurier and he had Sissoko tracking back to ensure that there was protection in those areas. On the other side, Conte was tracked by Eriksen. Eriksen would pinch out, but always come back in, and Chelsea had problems breaking down Spurs or even creating chances. So now let's get to what Spurs did right and how they were able to go up 2-0 going into halftime when in reality it could have been 3 or 4. When we break down how Spurs were able to dominate Chelsea, the front four who started for the first time this season were integral to their success, the various movement, and Chelsea never coped with it. We saw in the early minutes where the ball just switched out to Davies. Willian takes his time to get to Davies, and he's able to clip a ball over David Luiz for Dele Alli breaking in behind. Unfortunately for Spurs, Kepa was off his line quickly to get the ball, but again, you're seeing that Ali's able to make that run, join the box late, and that is key for Spurs. When we look at the build-up to the goal stemmed from a set piece. It did see Ali get in between his markers for Eriksen to curl that free kick into the box, but the build-up to that was very integral. We see Toby stepping forward. No one is pressing him. So what happens here is that Jorginho takes it amongst himself to push into that space. Now Toby's able to play that ball in between Kovacic and in between Jorginho for Son, who drops off. Once Son drops off, he instantly slides the ball out to Aurier. Aurier now is pressed by Kovacic because Hazard's not going to make that space and drop off to close him down. And what we see here is Kane slide in between Alonso and dart in between Luiz. Luiz now comes across and wildly takes him out, which leads to the free kick, which leads to the goal. That is a big issue, but that is how simple it was for Spurs to really break them down and carve open their chances. We look to another opportunity where what stems here is based on the fact that, again, you have an issue here when they're trying to really break down space and look to close down markers. That was the issue Chelsea had, because it's again a ball slid out to Davies from Alderweireld, and what happens here is that you have Willian and you have Azpilicueta step to him. What happens there is that now Kane is able to spin off Rudiger to drag him out of position. You have Ali stepping high with with Luiz, and what happens here is that you see Son make the run. Son makes the run in behind Jorginho. Davies fizzes the ball into him. He's able to turn and then run at Jorginho, but again, no one picking up Eriksen. So now the pass played into him sees ball played into Eriksen, and then you have Son running in between Luiz, running in between that space between Rudiger, gets the ball back, should score. He fires a shot over the net. Again, another great chance. It just goes to show no one closing down, not getting tight enough, not being aware of your spaces. But again, Spurs, the movement, Ali high. You have Kane pulling out Rudiger. You have Son running in behind Jorginho, and you had Eriksen making a late run in, no one picking it up. That's a big warning sign. We get them back into their main positions again. This one is just another breakdown from Chelsea, and it just goes to show they just weren't up for it on the day. It's not good from them. And what we see here is that the Eriksen drops off deep to get onto the ball. You have Willian in more of a central role, no one looking to pick up Eriksen, so Jorginho takes it amongst himself to step into that space. You have Conte wide, and he's watching Davies, who has a high position, and then you have Kane drifting out into the space where Azpilicueta is. At that moment, you're thinking, okay, what can happen here? Not much, but what happens is that Kane drops off, he receives the pass. Now you see Conte and Jorginho try to get to him, but he's able to run forward, and again, Rudiger doesn't step. Luis kind of brushes off. Kane is able to fire his shot past Kepa from an angle that you expect Kepa to save it, but you expect Luis to at least attempt to block it or Rudiger to step, and that's how the goal is scored. But when you break down that goal, you have, again, Kane there with Azpilicueta. You had Ali, who was a bit higher. What you can do here is that you have this 2v1. Why not shift off Rudiger to Kane? Yes, it's 2v2, but what happens here is that you push out Azpilicueta to Davies. You stick Willian is tracking back and not doing much, so you stick Conte to Eriksen so that pass can't be played, and you have Jorginho just keep his position there in case there are other runners coming in. That was a simple ploy. That is where they should have gone about it, but they didn't do that, and now they are down 2-0. And again, Chelsea had more issues to deal with. You think about it, you have Kane spinning out into the channels, pulling out Rudiger, being able to beat him 1v1, and then winning a free kick. You have another opportunity where Hazard's able to get onto the ball, but his pass into Willian is misplaced. Eriksen wins it, plays it into Ali. Ali ends up locating Kane, and Kane drags out Rudiger with the fullbacks high. So he drags out Rudiger and instantly plays the ball into the right channel for Son. Again, that is what they wanted. Pulling out markers, having Son break in or Ali break in behind, and that was key there. Another opportunity following that Rabona from Kovacic sees Ali locate space into the channels for Son, who's ready to take off, and Son breaks into that right channel, is able to cut in on Luis, and then Rudiger comes across and he's able to cut back and he fires a shot on goal. But again, you don't want Son in those areas, even coming close to your goal. But they're finding space into those channels. They were breaking deep. They were playing direct. The center backs had no answers for their movement, and that was one of the big problems here for Chelsea, besides being outnumbered in midfield. Then we get to the final opportunity of the half, and it's again Davies playing a key role, and he's able to find Ali, who slides in between Jorginho and in between Azpilicueta. Again, you have Kane moving into that space near Azpilicueta, and what happens? The pass is played into him. He's able to turn and locate a run from Eriksen in between Jorginho and Conte. What happens there? He breaks into that left half space, and we've seen Chelsea be exposed from these pullbacks on several occasions this season. And what happens again? Son is able to run in behind Kovacic to get the pullback, and he fires a shot on goal, but Kepa makes a big save. When you break down the first half as a whole, Chelsea not really doing well without the ball, not pressing, not closing down, had a few chances, not executing in the final third. But this was about Spurs, the movement of the front four, the center backs being pulled out by the front players, Jorginho being stifled by Son and specifically Ali. The fact that they were able to outnumber Chelsea in midfield, they were exposing them from wide areas, they were exposing them from pullbacks. This was Spurs doing their homework and executing it to a T. And now we get to the second half and see how Chelsea were going to look to approach the game and try to fight back, and how Spurs were able to kill it off. The second half didn't see any significant changes from either side. Spurs killed the game off within the opening 10 minutes of the half, but we did see Chelsea try to press from the front, and we saw, like Spurs, like Chelsea, when Dyer pushed in, what happened here is that you had Hazard, and then you had Morata sitting there, and that was how they were looking to stop Spurs from playing out of the back. However, Chelsea did have the better chance, and within a minute span, we saw Chelsea come close, and we saw Spurs kill off the game. And what happened there was we saw Eriksen pushing out to Azpilicueta, trying to press him. What happened was that Conte dropped off when Dyer was stepping to him, but once the pass was played into Conte, Dyer pushed away, and then you had Eriksen who had to push back to Conte, and Conte was able to spin him, and he played it off to Willian, who dropped off. Now with Willian dropping off, he's able to play the pass to Morata, who checks between the center backs, and he switches the ball out to Alonso, who's breaking forward. He switches the ball out to the left. Hazard breaks into the box at the near post, but the cross misses him, hits off Alderweireld. Then Conte, who was already forward from that move, continuing his run, laid it off to Willian, but Willian from point blank range skied his effort for a corner kick. Within a minute, you had Hazard being dispossessed down the left by Aurier. Ali picks up the ball, and Ali, what does he do? He instantly clips it out to Son, which leads to a race with Jorginho. You don't want Jorginho in these positions, and this was a big risk. Obviously, Chelsea are chasing the game, but Jorginho against Son, who is much faster and Obviously 1v1 is going to get the better of him, was able to skip by him. Although Jorginho had the option to take him out, he didn't. He skipped by him with ease, with a turn of pace. Luigi with a poor attempt at a tackle, and Son continues his run, is able to finish his effort. 3-0 Spurs. We see changes from Chelsea. They keep the same shape, but they move. They take off Morata. They end up bringing on Pedro. Pedro moves out to the right. Hazard goes central, Willian on the left. They bring on Barkley for Kovacic. What happens there? Not really much, because what we end up seeing is that, again, Kane spinning out into the channel. He's being marked out. He's been taken out by Rudiger. We had Jorginho ending up pulling off Ali when he skipped past him. There was one moment where we saw Chelsea press, and still, even with them pressing, Spurs were able to bypass them. You have Hazard pushing out to Alderweireld. He ends up switching the ball out to Davies. You have Pedro stepping to him. You have Eriksen coming out as well. And with Eriksen coming out, that means that you have Conte who's going to come out as well. You have Barkley sitting with Sissoko, and then you still have an open Dyer. What does Jorginho do? He decides to push to Dyer. Not obviously it's a risk, because you leave it 3v4, but the thing here is that he doesn't need to move there. If Dyer gets on the ball, so what? If anything, you could have Hazard drop off after that, or you could push another player infield. But what happens there is when he pushes forward, all they do is a simple 1-2. Dyer and Eriksen, they bypass both players. And then what you have here is a ball into Son, who drops off of the center backs. But what you see here, Ali looking to make the darting run in between Azpilicueta and in between Rudiger. You have Kane making the run in between Luigi and in between Alonso. What happens now? Son is able to run at the back four, because if they step out, the passing lanes are there. You have Sissoko breaking in behind Barkley. He plays the pass into him. What happens now is that Sissoko plays another pullback in between Luigi and in between Alonso. It falls to Kane. Kane should score. He skies his effort over the net. Kane and Ali had a nice combination. Minutes later, Ali skied his effort over the net. Chelsea end up bringing on Giroud, and Giroud for Willian. Giroud goes up front as Azpilicueta curls an effort into the box. Giroud's able to knot it in, but it wasn't enough. Spurs, on the premise of everything, the way they set up, the way they exploited the center backs, the movement of the front four, overloading that midfield zone, Chelsea's poor pressing, not being able to execute when they had their few chances, it led to this. And Spurs could have won by more. And it's a wake-up call for Chelsea, who were poor on the night and have been poor for a few weeks. This is where they are. They dropped to fourth, Spurs moved to third, and now we're really getting to see who these teams are. But let me know what you guys think. Was this just a bad night for Chelsea? Can Sarri fix this? How does he do it with Jorginho? And what about Spurs? Slowly moving up the table. Can they challenge for the title, or will they be battling for the top four? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget, I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.